very much all for coming on a Friday evening. It's one of my favourite times, the beginning of the weekend, isn't it? So really appreciate you coming. It's a fantastic turnout. Thank you. It's not the first time. I know you've probably come to something, well, one of our events. So thank you very much. The fight is still on. We've still got to fight, I'm afraid, but you're doing your bit. First, I must say a huge thank you, because probably everyone here wrote a letter to the Secretary of State for Health. Now, I don't know about you, but I did not expect the amount of response that we got. There were 5,506 letters received by the Secretary of State for Health. So thank you very much. Round of applause for that. Despite that, today the decision was ratified to remove orthopaedics, emergency orthopaedics and emergency general surgery from Eastbourne DGH, and remove stroke services from the Conquest in Hastings. It's a very sad day for East Sussex, but we are going to fight to the end, and there are 2 routes of appeal which we'll tell you about later, but we are still fighting. But I'm going to hand over to our MP Stephen, who was with me this morning at the meeting where the decision took place. So I'll pass over to Stephen.
Right, good evening everyone. Let's reiterate what Liz said, what an absolute fantastic turnout at such short notice. Everything's very fluid at the minute. It really is, and we've got 2.5 to 3 weeks to really pull all the stops out. Basically, this morning at NHS Sussex, who are the PCT, they're the sort of the commissioning body who give the money to the acute trusts. They had their board meeting today, and to be perfectly honest, a lot of it I thought was a bit of a rubber stamping exercise. And the bad news is that they did sign off what the Trust Board had proposed, which is downgrading orthopaedics and general surgery to Hastings. Now, there's one thing that I'll flag up that Liz and I didn't know was going to happen, which does give a little bit of an opening. You may or may not be aware that the Secretary of State has 4 very specific tests that any reconfiguration plans have to meet if they actually go ahead. And the first one is that any reconfiguration plan has to have the support of the local GP commissioning practice, which is basically going to be what is going to be called the GP consortia. Now, our CCG, which is the one that represents Eastbourne, Hailsham and Seaford, something's happened over the last few days. Certainly I was surprised but delighted, and that is that at the board meeting they said that they did not believe that orthopaedics and general surgery should move from the DGH to Hastings. Now, they still signed off on the principle of single siting, which Liz and I were very, and Colin Belsey was there as well. The 3 of us were very disappointed by that. But there's a technical issue there that I need to explain a wee bit, because this is what we're now getting down to. By the GP consortia, the CCG, not signing off to point 1 of the 4 tests, i.e. it has to have local GP commissioning practice supporting it, that means that we will be speaking with the lawyers next week, and I will be saying to the lawyers, and I'll also be contacting Jeremy Hunt, because I will say categorically that whatever the decision was taken at the board meeting today, it is in breach specifically of number 1 of the tests. Now, I'm sorry that sounds very anal and very detailed, but that's the kind of thing we're now working on, because we've been liaising closely with the legal team, local legal team, who have been advising the Save the DGH campaign team from the beginning. And one of the challenges we've had this time compared to last time is that they've been much more careful on process. You remember we had this issue with maternity, which we won. This time, the managers of the trust have been much more careful, and it's been difficult for us to find an edge where we can either force it to go to the independent reconfiguration panel or look at grounds for a judicial review. So the bad news is today that they did sign that off. The good news is that that has given us a little bit of an edge, which we will be exploring next week. Aside from that, what now happens is it goes to something called the Health and Overview Scrutiny Committee. That's made up of county councillors and some independent advisors, I think, but mostly county councillors from the whole of East Sussex, and they will be considering the final report, the final proposals, I think, Liz, is it the 13th? On the 13th of December. That gives us, 2.5, 3 weeks. And what we've got to do now as a town, as a constituency, and people from Seaford and Polegate and Hailsham and Uckfield who are also supportive of our campaign, is we've now got to get as many names of members of the public as possible opposing the reconfiguration plans. And the reason for that is that because we know we've got over 90% of the consultants at DGH saying they oppose, 95% saying they oppose it, because we've now got the CCG saying that they do not want orthopaedics and general surgery moved to Hastings, plus the fact we know that the public are on board, 5,500 letters to the Secretary of State, as Liz already mentioned, but what I now need is I need thousands of names. And so a key reason that we wanted you to come here this evening is we now need you to be our salespeople. Essentially, when you came in this evening, you signed a petition, of course you did. We've held this far for a petition because we wanted to use it at the end if the result goes against us like it has, so we can now ramp up literally with thousands of signatures from Eastbourne, Willingdon, Polegate, Seaford, you name it. So part of what I'm going to be asking everyone to do this evening is to take some petition sheets with you, preferably just one or two, if you wouldn't mind, photocopy them, and what you guys have got to do now is get all your members of the family to sign it, to take the petitions into work, to get all your work colleagues to sign it, to speak to all your friends. We need, in the next 3 weeks, and I know it's a tall order, but look, I've got 200, 300, 400 people here. We need around 10,000 signatures in the next 2.5, 3 weeks. And that means the only way I can do that, or we can achieve that, is you need to do it for us. Now, as well as that, the Arndale Centre has very kindly given us a shop for the next 2.5, 3 weeks, where we're going to have the petitions there every day, 5, 6, 7 days a week, what have you, petition sheets to collect as many signatures as possible from people who go into town. Now, the challenge with that is Liz is snowed, I'm snowed, we're all just completely snowed, and so there's no way in a million years that we're going to be able to run and man that shop. It's just impossible. So again, I'm asking you guys, I'm asking Eastbourne, I'm asking Willingdon, and anyone from further afield who's here, I need Eastbourne to step up and help the campaign team run that shop for the next 2.5 weeks. So Monica, where's Monica? Monica is very kindly going to be handing out 6 or 7 clipboards, and on them, these aren't the petition boards, these are the boards where if people in this room can write their name, telephone number, email, and all that you will be agreeing to do is to maybe give the town, give the Saving the Hospital campaign a few hours a week. And if anyone when they get the board, if they think that they would be in a position where they might be able to actually help us coordinate it, because not only do I need about 50 Eastbourne and Willingdon and Polegate folk to actually man the shop for a couple of hours a week over the next 2.5 weeks, I need a number of people here, there's a lot of experience in the room, I can see it. I need a few people who might suggest themselves as possible coordinators. So if you think that if you think you can spare a few hours a week, please do sign or write your name and address and telephone number and what have you on the clipboard. If you think that you're able and your background, experience or whatever is actually able to help us to be one of the 2, 3 or 4 coordinators, I'd be very grateful if you just put in brackets by your name, possible coordinator. Words to that effect. Does that make sense? Good, thank you. Right, Monica, if you can start handing those back. There's a lot of people here, so I hope it doesn't get too confusing. Please don't confuse it with the petitions. That's absolutely crucial. Now, on the petitions front, Tim, I know you brought the box. They're all at the back. The guys at the back, are there loads of empty sheets of petitions at the back? Sorry? They have. Okay. What I need, a few folk at the back, if that's all right. I can't see you from here, but Alan and I can see a few others. A few folk at the back, could you please, I would say to one side, to the other, make sure you've got a pile of the petition sheets so that when people leave, if they want to take a petition sheet, make sure they get one. We're trying to avoid giving everyone 10 because otherwise we'll run out. I think we brought 1,000, but nonetheless, please just take a couple of petition sheets with you when you leave. The contact details are on the petition sheet about where you send them once they've been filled in. But if you're able to take a couple, photocopy the blank sheets, then it means we can, like a pebble in a pond. That's what we're doing here now for the next 2.5 weeks. Us, you guys, us on the stage, we are one giant pebble in the pond that is about retaining core services at DGH. So I'd be really, really grateful if as many of you as possible could help us do that. Thank you. Now for the rest, Liz, do I pass back to you? You keep sort of seeing it. Anyway, thank you very much, everyone. And obviously I'll be sticking around afterwards if anyone wants to have a chat. Thank you.
That'll be the longest speech. Just so you're aware. It's not just patients and it's not just staff that suffer through this. I'm going to just introduce you briefly to Ray Mason, who is President of Eastbourne and District Chamber of Commerce.
Well, good evening everyone, and on behalf of the Eastbourne Chamber of Commerce, I just wanted to say a few words about just how crucial this whole issue is, not just for us, the residents of Eastbourne and the surrounding districts, but for the wider economic future of the town. And as such, this campaign, and Stephen, has the full ongoing support of the Eastbourne and District Chamber of Commerce. Because it strikes the Chamber as amazing that Eastbourne, which is the economic powerhouse of East Sussex, that has the fastest growing population in the county, and the most proactive effort to attract new businesses to the whole area, is to have one of its most vital community services downgraded. We find it ridiculous. And in doing so, by downgrading that service, our ability to attract and develop new businesses and employment in this area is seriously damaged. We do understand that Hastings also has the need for a fully functional hospital service. But we believe the answer is not to rob Peter to pay Paul, but to build a hospital service in each town that addresses the needs of each community fully, not a patchwork of services that are split between the two. So we'd just like to say, on behalf of, as I say, the Eastbourne and District Chamber of Commerce, thank you to the campaign leaders and Steve. And please be assured that the Eastbourne Chamber of Commerce, who represent over 600 businesses and many thousands of individuals, pledge our support to this campaign and you to fight for the restoration of these services in whatever way we can. Thank you very much.
Also has the organisations have played an important part, but there's the churches that have played a huge part in this town. And I'd just like to pass over to Martin Ralph for a few words.
Thank you, Liz. Amazing to see everyone here tonight. It's absolutely fantastic. Why should Christians be involved in this? Well, first of all, I think, like everyone else, we're just ordinary citizens. We've got our families and networks and people and communities that we just love, and we want to make sure that we have the best services possible for health and healing. And as Christians, health and healing is very important in what we believe in. I think particularly one of the things that comes back to me so often is if services are transferred to Hastings and vice versa for people who live in Hastings that are going to need to come to Eastbourne, the people that are most going to be disadvantaged through this are going to be the people who rely on public transport because they're not well off enough to afford their car and the travel and all of that. And you know what a nightmare it would be to get from Eastbourne through to the Conquest. You know, if you had to visit a family member who was in hospital there, you know, my mum has just been in hospital for over 2 months. I've been wanting to visit her every day. Well, gosh, if I had to go to the Conquest every day on the train and the bus, it would have, you know, what a nightmare that is. And I think that is, to me, that's a really important issue, and I think it's an issue of justice, actually, for ordinary people, that we consider that. And as Christians, we really want to be on that particular issue most concerned. Just to say, I've just had a quick look round. I can see 1 or 2 faces of people I know from particular churches in the area. And can we particularly pick up these sheets, the sign-up sheets? Sorry, brain goes dead, doesn't it, at these times like this? And take them to our folks in our churches, and stand there at the door. And don't let them out until they've signed, all right? And can you come to me and let me know if you're willing to do that? Because if there's 2 people from the same church coming and doing it, then we need to sort of avoid that confusion. So please come to me, and let's see if we can be a little bit coordinated about this. When the maternity services were saved for Eastbourne those years ago, it was an astonishing thing that happened. I mean, it was unique in the country. And I have to say, there are some of us who prayed about that now. So I say, if you're a person of prayer, then get on your knees, or whatever you do, about this issue today. Because we believe we have someone who cares about this issue and can act if we get on to him. Thank you very much, Liz.
Thank you. Now, we thought it would be quite good because sometimes for you to actually ask questions, because sometimes there's things you're not clear about, and we know what's going on. It's very complicated, but you actually may not quite understand. So we're going to have a roving mic, which Helen's going to take it round, and if you put up your hand if you've got a question, if you completely understand what's going on and no questions, fine. But if there's a question you want answered, you can't quite understand, we're just going to have a time now where you can ask a question, and probably I will try and answer, or Stephen might.
Good evening. Stephen said there was 4 criteria which they've got to fulfil. He mentioned the first one. Am I to assume that the other 3 criteria are sewn up?
There's 4 tests for the NHS to actually, that they have to actually sort of abide by. The 4 tests, I'm not quite, I can't quite remember them, but one of the area that we would have the most opportunity to actually contest is the clinical support and public support. However, in those tests it says public engagement. And I think you may remember, some of you that actually came to the Congress Theatre when we were protesting outside a public meeting that they were holding, and we said, don't go in, because public engagement was the test. And in actual fact, we don't believe that they've actually qualified in the public engagement test, because they had 454 replies to the surveys that were in their public consultation document, and they say that there were 1,000 people that went to their marketplace events, but there's nothing to justify that. But even so, that is not a lot over 12 weeks of public consultation. So thank you again for understanding. But the other tests are tests which are peculiar to the NHS, and they would qualify to have done that. Another question?
Good evening. There seems to be some ambiguity about orthopaedics. Is the recommendation that all orthopaedic services are transferred to the Conquest, or is it emergency orthopaedics?
At present, it's emergency orthopaedics, but because services are built up from emergencies, at the moment it's emergency orthopaedics. So it's not all orthopaedics, just emergencies.
To put that in context, Rob, even the Chief Executive, is my voice loud enough? Yeah. Even the Chief Executive, Darren Grayson, admitted in the Gazette on Tuesday, his phrase was something like, it will be as little as 15 people a day making a transfer. Well, 15 times, however many, 350 days a year, that's a minimum of 5,000 people making that journey. And the clinical advice that Liz and I have had is that actually it will be much more than that. So even if you take and he was obviously downplaying it as much as he could, that means you're talking 5,000 people making that journey. By the way, I also did my team did some research up in Westminster last week. That road in the last 6 years, let me get the figures right, there have been 67 deaths, there have been around 700 serious accidents, there have been around 4,000 accidents. The fact is, when people say to me, and I've been interviewed today on television, they said that Stephen, the King's Fund, this group, that group, say that everything needs to be joined together into larger sites. What we can say to them with complete authority is they should come here and see that road. If that was a dual carriageway and it's only 15 minutes, bluntly it would be blooming hard for us to win this fight. Yeah. But it is a rotten road, and you're talking 45 minutes in a rush hour, you're not going to do much less than that, even if you're a blue line.
Sorry, also, emergency is unplanned. So if you've got a hip operation that you've been waiting for, that's planned and you'll have at the DGH. The DGH. If you fall over and break your hip, that is unplanned, and that would be considered an emergency. So that, if that helps explain that.
You remember with maternity, we won the IRP, the Independent Reconfiguration Panel. It's HOSC, the Health and Overview, all these acronyms in the NHS implemented. It is the Health and Overview Scrutiny Committee who take a decision to refer...
Stephen, some people can't hear you. Can you use the mic? Sorry.
It is the Health and Overview Scrutiny Committee who take a decision to refer to the Secretary of State to refer to the Independent Reconfiguration Panel. Liz and I have written on behalf of the cross-party DGH team a number of times, and we've sent another letter based on what happened at the board meeting this morning, urging that HOSC refer it to the IRP. Now, equally, now we've got that, we've got that result today. My office has already organised for the campaign team to meet Jeremy Hunt. We will now be fixing, he's the Secretary of State for Health, we will now be fixing a date now that we've got that definite view, and we will also be reiterating the case that this must be referred to the IRP.
Okay, just on the orthopaedics, I've also had conversations with members of staff at the DGH who are telling me that they've been told it's emergency orthopaedics and high-risk orthopaedics, which could be a planned operation but with an unfit patient. So it could be more than we're thinking.
First of all, I just very, very quickly introduce myself. John Burns, I live in Seaford, and I've lived in Seaford since 1965. I've seen an increase in the population there, from something like 13,500 to 27,000. When I see the increase in the population which has taken place in Eastbourne and now in Hailsham and other associated areas, the demographics of this whole question seems to me has been rather forgotten by the people that are trying to take decisions. Now, if in fact you work out how many people in fact are possibly going to have to be transferred if this proposal goes ahead to go down to Hastings, to the Conquest, which in fact, again, population-wise, in the rural areas of East Sussex, the demand in fact is nowhere near what it is in this, what I would say, the western side, if you like, or the triangle that Stephen referred to, which was the Eastbourne, Hailsham and Seaford, with the new commissioning groups, which in fact the doctors are opposed to. Now it seems to me that unless in fact somebody is, I don't know who's on this strategic committee of the NHS, I don't know how many of those people actually live in this area anyway. They probably come from the Outer Hebrides or somewhere, I don't know. But the point is, it really needs for the future, and we went down this situation 2 or 3 years ago with the, with regard to the maternity section, which was trying to be transferred. And there was a very, very good campaign to block that and stop it. And it seems to me, I hope that that is also going to be, because that's coming down the line again, I'm absolutely sure. So therefore, if the decision-making machinery is to actually finish up with saying, we don't really need maternity, which going back to that side again, we'll move them all over there to let them all go down the 259, which was a disgraceful road anyway, which was in fact designed in 1880 from Portsmouth to Folkestone. If you read your history, it's absolutely diabolical. The thing is that if in fact we're saying that and then somebody else is taking a decision to build 2,000 or 3,000 more houses in Polegate area and expand there, with it, the chances are many, many more people that are going to have families and babies. Who in fact is actually taking decisions, and that's what I would like to question, without going into the demographics of the whole of the area here. And as Stephen pointed out earlier on, the increase in fact in our age group, the age group that I'm in fact certainly don't want to finish up with having to spend time, energy and money getting from here in Seaford or in Eastbourne and then transshipping off down to Hastings. I think it's an absolute disgrace, and the more pressure that we can bring to bear on the people that are trying to take these decisions, the better.
Thank you very much. That's a very good point. The Seaford perspective, which the local NHS would say, well, you can go to Brighton, and I think that that is not a good enough reason, because people in Seaford have been very supportive of this campaign, and we have always maintained this campaign is not just for Eastbourne, it's for East Sussex, and it's for the best for the people of East Sussex.
June Baker, Eastbourne. People of Eastbourne thought long and hard about the parking in this town, and our wishes were completely ignored. We signed petitions, it went to London. Is the same thing going to happen again? Of our large population, the wishes are going to be ignored. We don't seem to be listened to.
We hope not. The last time when we had the petition for maternity and all the public support, that made a huge amount of difference. And it is making a difference now in this particular fight. It might not appear to be, but the local NHS are concerned. And this is why it is absolutely crucial that the petition that we launch today gets signed in 3 weeks. If we can get thousands of signatures on those petitions, then we can say the local people just do not support this. And so you could say, well, it's not worth fighting. if you don't fight, we will definitely lose.
Are we going to... Sorry. Are we going to use the TV? We've got a very good TV in this area. Are we going to use people on the TV to support us?
How do you mean on the TV? I'm not quite... Ask the television to... I can't quite understand. Well, we do try and we use the media as much as we can, but they have to be sort of unbiased. When we were having the march in September, we wanted to raise awareness of the current situation, and we decided as a campaign group to actually pay money for advertising because we felt that people needed to know what was happening with their local health services. We could not advertise because we were told we were political. So that is the reason that it's very difficult to actually get the message across. So we need to use people like you to get the message across. And yes, we would use the media. We use the media as much as we can, but they cover all sorts of stories, and unless it's absolutely in the public eye at that time, sometimes it doesn't get the actual sort of awareness that it possibly could.
I'm Hazel Elrick from Eastbourne. After the seafront protest, we were given these letters to take round to people, and I took a lot, and I said to the people that I gave them to, it's important you post this because it's a letter from you, and however many names you get on a petition, it only counts as one protest. Now, I'm to go to those same people again with a petition this time, and I don't quite understand. Is it going to count the names on this petition when I've been telling people a petition only counts as one protest?
The petition is the way in which you actually protest against current proposals.
Yes.
And the letters, they, as we said, they have 5,506 is a pretty good number. And it was a way in which we wanted to get through to the Secretary of State. But the actual petition, it's crucial that it is used in the right way, and if we get names on that petition in 3 weeks, that will be able to be used. It's not going to be put in an envelope, it's going to be handed over.
Right, so every name will still count on this petition?
Oh, absolutely, but it's going to the local HOSC. It's not going to somebody out, you know, there in London. It's actually going to the local HOSC, and we will be saying to the local HOSC members, we will be telling them how many names we've got. We will be passing those sheets to the HOSC members so that they can actually take that to their meeting and say, this is what the public think.
Thank you.
If I can add something to that, the letters were incredibly successful because the whole point with the letters, there's so many challenges going out there at the minute with different issues across the NHS that I needed the Secretary of State to understand just how important we took this issue in Eastbourne. And I know that we could have sorted a petition then, and I know that thousands of people would have signed it, but it would have gone in a box and it would have turned up at Richmond House to the Secretary of State, and he would never even know about it because it would have been accepted and put in the corner. I can tell you for an absolute fact, for those of you who were at the march, remember I was going on and on about individual letters, please, individual letters. My team finally got the number, only I think it was Tuesday, wasn't it, on Tuesday, from the Secretary of State's private office. And to put it mildly, she gave that number through gritted teeth. Jeremy Hunt, and there's 650 MPs. You know, he's a separate party from me, so I didn't know Jeremy Hunt. Believe you me, Jeremy Hunt now knows that I'm the MP for Eastbourne and that Eastbourne is fighting like hell for DGH because of those letters. It was really important. The petitions now we know exactly what is proposed. In the sense, yes, the proposals were there before, but now we know this is it. This is allegedly, albeit HOSC is still to come, but this is allegedly, this is what's going to happen. So the petition is a very, very specific that in 2.5, 3 weeks, Eastbourne and the surrounding area, Seaford, it was great to hear the gentleman earlier, Hailsham, Uckfield, all points in between, thousands of people in 2.5 weeks fundamentally disagree with the proposal. and test 2 or 3, I can't remember which, Liz has already talked about it, is reconfiguration changes need to have public support. They bang on about 450 people. That's peanuts. You know, we send 5,500 letters, and I know we're going to get absolutely thousands of petitions. And remember, for those who watch Prime Minister's questions, is I slightly bounced the Prime Minister, and I said, will the Prime Minister agree with me that something along the lines of there can be no changes without local and clinical support? And David Cameron, the Prime Minister, turned to me and he said, the Honourable Member is absolutely right, there can be no reconfiguration change without X, Y, Z. And I was very specific about that, which is why having our GP, the CCG group, GP consortia, today, be reported at the board that they do not agree that orthopaedics and general surgery should go to Conquest. That's another little chip, or another little hole in the vessel NHS Sussex. So the petitions, I know it's low tech, I know it almost can be despairing sometimes, but I promise you, the whole, say the DGH campaign team are absolutely emphatic about how advantageous it would be to have absolutely thousands of you guys sign it over the next few weeks.
Right, are there any more?
Yeah, would there be any merit in people actually writing letters to the Secretary of State anyway, regardless of the petition?
You can write to the Secretary of State, but what normally happens is when you write to the Secretary of State for Health, it actually goes to the Department of Health, and you get a standard letter back. So you're welcome to, but I think that's what will happen. Is there any one here, one there, and I think... Oh, you've got some... Oh, right.
It's John Freeman, the chair of the Greater Seaboard Seniors Forum. I'd like, Liz, if we may, just to return to maternity services for a moment, because as you will be aware, there's been quite a lot of myth and legend in the local press recently from the Quality Care Commission saying there aren't enough consultants to actually service the units, so that one of them may need to temporarily be closed from next April. Do you think that? And if you think, do you think that if we do lose the other services in Eastbourne, could they, losing those, have a knock-on effect in the provision of maternity services in Eastbourne?
Yeah, thanks, John. Yes, absolutely. We will almost certainly lose consultant-led maternity because there is, well, we don't know of a place in the country, a hospital in the country that does not have general surgery that has a consultant-led maternity unit. So I think that would happen. And then you may ask, well, what happened to our fight the last time? That's a very good question, and we will look into that because the Secretary of State for Health at that point said maternity must stay consultant-led at Eastbourne and Hastings, and we believe not much has changed in 4 years. So thank you for that question.
Good evening. I sit on our local PPG group. In April, the PCT will no longer exist and GPs will be governing their own budgets. If all these patients are going to be sent to Hastings, that is going to cost our GP surgeries a lot more money. So why does the PCT seem to have got rid of it before April? Surely there's a loophole there that you could get round with the GPs to all get together to actually fight to keep their costs down, as we've not been given a budget for April yet.
It's a very good question, and it's a question I asked at the board today, actually, about the accountability of the PCT after April and the accountability of the CCGs before April. I don't think it was really answered, was it? So we don't know the answer to your question, and in fact, I don't think the NHS locally know the answer to the question, but it is a very good one.
But surely they can't keep sending patients somewhere where they haven't got a budget. They must surely have to know what a budget is.
Well, what they would call it is patient modelling, and they haven't done that yet.
He needs to
Yeah, I suggest you ask the NHS direct, because I don't know the answer to it. All right.
Hello there, I'm Heidi Cowdery from the East Beach Hotel. Two things. You said that you couldn't advertise because it was political, but do you use social media? Do you have a Facebook campaign for it?
We do, and I'll just introduce you to Ian Lucas, who can say a little bit about that.
Well, hello Heidi. Just to say, I hope it doesn't appear rude. I've not been sitting here texting or anything. I've been tweeting and updating the Facebook status and all that. We do use it. The thing about not being political is, particularly in election times, but also the BBC and any radio station has to be really sharp about that. They're not allowed to do, they're not allowed to take one side or another side, and that's what that was all about. But there's nothing to stop us getting our story out through press releases and all the press stories, and that's what, well, Stephen and all the team are quite good at. And the lady asked about TV coverage and things. We do use a lot of TV coverage whenever we can, but of course it's not down to us. We don't control that, but we do by I mean, for example, nearly 400 people here this evening. That's a good press story, and the press will know about it. So we do whatever we can to make sure the story gets out there. But we are limited to a certain extent, but we're certainly doing what we can.
How many followers do you have on Facebook and Twitter?
It's a couple of thousand, but it gets tweeted out further than that. But if you've got scope to increase those numbers, that would be great. But it goes to a couple of thousand instantly, and it gets cascaded after that as well.
So you really want everybody to retweet it and relike your pages to then sort of get further on the campaign? Because as you look around the room, with respect, everybody here is of a certain age that probably doesn't spend their life on Facebook and tweeting and retweeting and liking this page and that page because they're too busy running life.
Well,
I wasn't being rude in that sense, but you know.
Thank you, Heidi, for the question.
And as a business person as well, having a hotel within Eastbourne, all the tourists, we want them to come, we want to promote Eastbourne as a fabulous town, and every year, without fail, I have at least 2 people that fall over, have the hips going, and to say, oh yeah, you've got to go to Hastings. It's just not acceptable for us to send our visitors as well as, the residents out of town. It's a bit embarrassing that we can't accommodate these things. We're saying we're fantastic, Eastbourne is great, we can offer this, this and this, but don't fall over.
That's a very good point. And can I just take up on the TV and media? We are filming it this evening, thanks to Vince over there and his colleague. So it's going to be put on YouTube and on the internet. So all those that have got friends and people that they know, they can pass that on and they can see what's happened this evening. Right, next question. Yes.
So I'm usually and probably late to the campaign, but you mentioned, I think, that at some point there are also reductions in the Hastings hospital. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a coordinated response? Because presumably they don't want, well, 2 things. They don't want half the population of Eastbourne descending on Hastings, and equally they don't want to lose services either. So what coordination of response do we have?
We are coordinated with Hands Off the Conquest campaign. The chair, Margaret Williams, was at the meeting this morning with me. For those that I can't remember if it was BBC or ITV, Margaret and I were interviewed together, and we absolutely believe that both hospitals should have all their core services. We're absolutely firm in that. It's not one against the other. It's absolutely that is because the road is the same either way, and so it's really important that we fight for both, and it's very Sussex.
So does that mean, by the way, you mentioned 10,000 signatures, Steve. Does that mean that signatures collected in both towns and council the same vote?
Well, I think you see, they are doing their petition. They are doing a petition, and they have actually been at the Priory Meadow Shopping Centre collecting names. They will pass those names to their MP because it works in MPs and to get it through into Parliament. And that's the way that, we've done it.
I'm afraid there's no battery.
It's a very good point. And we have maintained that it is about finance. And, but when it's been denied, it's very difficult to say, well, it is about finance, but it's a very good point, very well made. Yes, yeah. We've actually worked an option that actually keeps trauma and orthopaedics, the services here. We believe that core services must be the first thing that stay at Eastbourne District General Hospital and Hastings Conquest. They are the emergency services that are needed in a hurry, that everybody may need. So we would start with the premise, those stay, let's look at the other services. But we do believe that it is about finance, and this particular area is very badly off financially. There's all sorts of things about tariffs, but at the moment we are fighting to keep these services, the core services, at the local hospitals.
They should stop paying off chief executives.
Absolutely.
Presumably, if all the patients that are referred for the emergency surgery and orthopaedics are referred by the casualty department at the DGH, then surely that would be the next thing to go.
That's a very good point. With trauma and orthopaedics, they say that A&E is not going to be affected. Today, they spoke about trauma units and trauma centres. Brighton is a trauma centre, which is like a specialist unit. The trauma unit is going to be Hastings. So Eastbourne DGH trauma unit is going to be downgraded. It will have its trauma unit status taken away. To us, that seems a downgrading. It does seem that A&E is going to be affected. And this is where words, clever words, they say A&E isn't going to be affected. They must have reclassified A&E to actually say it's not going to be downgraded. That's our opinion. But that's a very good point.
Also, I've got no medical experience, but I've been told that for stroke patients, the first 2 or 3 hours after a stroke is vitally important.
Absolutely.
We're now suggesting that 20 minutes, half an hour, they're going to be in Eastbourne DGH. The next hour, possibly, they're going to be in an ambulance. They've lost all that. Have they not worked that out? Sorry, it'd be the other way around. They've been coming.
Yes, yeah. What they're saying is that the paramedics will be able to diagnose a stroke, and they'll be able to be taken straight to Eastbourne. So if you're in Hastings and you have a stroke, they'll be taken straight to Eastbourne DGH and dealt with there, and they say that that will be quicker than at the moment. That's what they say. When it's a very good point, and we have argued it, and it's a very good point, because one of the things that when I was looking into this, and medical, I'm not a doctor and I'm not medically trained, but you lose over 2 million brain cells for every minute after the first sign of the onset of a stroke. The first sign of onset of stroke. So you're losing quite a lot of brain cells if you lose 2 million for each minute.
Can I just ask one last question? Has the health authority, or whoever controls or finances the ambulance service, have they actually mentioned how much more money they're going to pour into that service to be able to transfer patients from Eastbourne to Hastings to Eastbourne?
Another very good point. The question, we have asked the question. The ambulance service say they will put in the investment needed to provide the services that are required for the area. But from just looking at it very crudely, you'd need to have quite a few ambulances. And is that cost effective? It's not actually been costed, we believe, properly, but it's another very good point. I think. Yeah.
I've obviously spoken to the Chief Executive of CCAT, that's the ambulance service. Now, he can't say that he agrees with us. And what he says to me is, Stephen, I have to deliver the decision that the board says, whether I like it or not. I've known Paul a long time, I'm absolutely convinced that he agrees with us rather than them, but the ambulance service simply has to deliver what the board actually decides. And if you're picking up on your point, if the chief executive, as it was in the paper a few days ago, said it's only going to be 15 a day, that's an additional minimum, absolute minimum, of 5,000 a year, and that's for an already stretched ambulance service on a rotten road. So though I know Paul can't go public and support us on this, because he's chief executive of CCAM, I'm pretty darn sure where his heart lies in this, because it just makes it so very, very hard for him. And on top of that, his budget's getting squeezed, so he's not even going to get new ambulances. Very difficult.
Yeah.
I'd like to know, if we win this fight this time, what's to stop them taking something else? Is there a way that Eastbourne Hospital can become independent so that the town can have a hospital that they know can provide all these services, even if people knew that their council tax was going to go up £5 a month, but they knew that meant they were keeping their hospital the way that it is, the way that it can provide everything? Is there a way that you could do that?
It's a very good point, and as a campaign group we have actually looked into the possibility of demerging, and it's certainly not off the radar, but throughout the country what is happening with NHS trusts is they're not actually demerging, they're merging, they're getting bigger, and that seems to be the way of the Department of Health and the NHS. So it would be quite an uphill battle to actually pursue that, but it's not off the radar. Thank you. I think we wanted to keep this meeting brief, and thank you all very much for your questions. If there are any other questions, you can ask us afterwards, please, because we want to finish by 7. We're so grateful that you've come, and we don't want to sort of overstay things. I think just to say that we value your support. We need your support. If we are going to win this, we absolutely need your support, and everyone is important. Each one of you here this evening has made a huge difference and did for maternity. So can I thank you for coming? Is there anybody that wants to say anything if I've missed anything? Oh yes, on Wednesday evening there was a motion by Eastbourne Borough Council that was passed unanimously to support keeping trauma and orthopaedics and general surgery at Eastbourne DGH. That was carried unanimously by all the councillors, cross-party, of which most of the councillors are here this evening. So.
Helen is the Labour Party representative, so this, as with maternity, all the parties are actually joined at the hip on this in fighting for Eastbourne. I want to make that point.
Yeah, I don't want to hold you any longer, just to say that that notice of motion was moved jointly by myself and David Alkin to demonstrate that cross-party unity. Helen from the Labour Party, the Green Party have also offered their support. This isn't a campaign about party politics. This is a campaign of a community fighting for the future of its hospital, and that's why we deserve to win it.
Thank you very much for coming, and have a lovely weekend.